going to give you some new numbers now, and we're going to work on partial and full compensation. The previous video was on uncompensated acidosis and alkalosis, but let's talk about partial compensation. So partial compensation and full compensation. Let's just first start off by saying your pH is normal under two circumstances. So if you ever find that your pH is sitting here in the normal box, everything is either normal, which is just normal, or one other value is abnormal and you call it fully compensated. I know that sounds weird. I know that you have to see it, but only under two circumstances is your pH normal. If everything is normal or you're fully compensated. So let's start with a partial compensation example. Let's say that you have a pH of 7.31 and you have a CO2 of 30 and you have a bicarb of 16. So let's put this information in a box. Remember, this is my acid side, this is my normal side, and this is my basic side, or my alkaline side. So a pH is 7.31. My normal range is 7.35 to 7.45, and we're talking 7.31. So where does that land? Where do I put it? The acid box, the normal box, or the base box? 7.31 would be over here. So I'm going to put pH in the acid box, right? So we have a CO2 of 30. My range for CO2 is 35 to 45. So what box do I put CO2 in? Acid, normal, or base? A CO2 of 30. $30 would be out here because my range is 35 to 45. 30 would be over here, right? So I'm going to put CO2 in that base box. And let's look at our bicarb now. We have a bicarb of 16. And my range is 22 to 26. 22 to 26. So where does 16 land? It's on that left-hand side, right? So I'm going to put HCO3 in this acid side because 16 would be way over here on this side before 22. If you need to rewind that and pause it and rewind it, go do it. I won't even know. Okay, so let's try and name this one. My pH, it tells you where you're at every time. Is it in the acid side? Is it normal or is it basic? Because that's what it's going to tell us what we're in. It's in the acid box, right? So I'm going to call this acidosis because it's on the acid side. And with this grid, wherever the pH is you look directly underneath it. And HCO3 is directly underneath it, right? HCO3 represents what? HCO3 represents metabolic, so I can call it metabolic acidosis. Now we'll talk compensation. My CO2 is over here and it's abnormal. Remember before in the other previous examples we said if one of those values is in the middle, it's normal, right? It's not compensating. Well, on this side, it's trying to compensate. It's trying to fix the problem. If you've got way too much acid, you'd need more base to counteract and bring that pH into normal level. So it's trying to get more basic on this end. But has it fixed my pH? Is my pH normal in this example? No. So it hasn't fully compensated because if it was fully compensated, my body would be equalized and my pH would be normal. Since it's not, you can call this partially compensated. So I'm going to say partially compensated metabolic acidosis. Go back and rewind if you need. I say that a lot in this video, in these video series. pH is acidic. In this grid, bicarbs underneath it represents metabolic. So metabolic acidosis. My CO2 is outside of its normal range, so it's trying to make more base to pull that pH back into normal range, but it hasn't fully done that yet, so it's partially compensated. Another way to think about partial compensation is every single one of those values is abnormal. This is all abnormal. If each of your values is abnormal, you're partially compensated. Write that one down. You'll want to write that one down. If each of your values is abnormal, no matter where they are, if they're abnormal, you're partially compensated. That's a good one to remember.